welcome screen. On the left is videos for creating objects, editing objects, assigning materials. I generally deactivate it, but I'll at least wait 3 weeks before I deactivate it. And on the right are things I already worked on. So I'm going to close it. On the right you have your stack. Anything that you can create, make, do is on your stack. It also runs along the top, so you have two places you can find everything, on the right or on the top. We'll start with, let's just first of all start creating our folder. So if you're going to create your folder, anywhere on the biggest drive, which I think is the D drive, name, student number, inside module 1, so you know which module in, and then you go and say manage, set folder, and then you set it to the folder. So now you are class 3 of Tuesday, because I am so original. I could give you names, but I'm not a Mac. I don't need to call you leopard or cheetah class. So now we're going to click on OK. If I go to that exact folder right now, there's nothing in it. I'll go to my D drive, Tuesday, class 3, there's nothing in the lesson 1. The moment I click on it and click OK, it will create all the folders. Reason why it creates all those folders is Max has got a very specific way it likes the folder structure. You don't have to keep all those folders. You can actually get rid of the ones that you don't need. Come in. No, not a problem. You can delete the folders you don't want. This is just the standard template that it makes. I like to keep it down to 5. Generally your scenes, your textures, your import, export, and your renders. That's the 5 I like to keep. Unless I'm doing like ZBrush, then maybe I'll put a ZBrush folder or a Mudbox so I know specifically exactly where it's coming from. So now I'm just going to save it. We've created the folder by going on the little Max icon, manage, set folder. The moment you set that folder, it'll save and source all the files from that folder. So every week you can go and set the folder. So you come in and you go set project folder, you select your project folder and done. Okay. And now the moment I go save, it'll save into the scenes folder of module 1, Tuesday, class 3, lesson 1, scenes. All your scenes are saved into the scenes folder. So Tuesday underscore 03 underscore 01. I like to save things incrementally because if something crashes, and I've had people last year get away with murder because they say, oh, my homework was deleted. Please don't be saved. The only copy must not be at ever. You must take it home. Please save it everywhere if you can, because you will be kicking yourself if you will have to redo the work again. And you click save. I like to incrementally save. That means the moment I click save, it will save a new version every time. If you want to do that as well, you don't have to. Go on preferences and under files, increment on save is generally not ticked. I like to tick it on. I also like to set up my undos to more than 20, but for this it's fine. Okay, and click OK. And now every time I save, you'll notice the name is up there. It says Tuesday underscore class underscore 301. It'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It'll go crazy. You just have to go and keep tabs on it because I generally get into the thousands before I realize I have to start deleting because I'm running out of hard drive space. Now you got your toolbars on the top. Will be the same on the side, but I'll run through them both. The first one is your Max icon, which gives you the chance to open, save, save as, import, export, your usual any software preferences. Now if you go to the bottom, edit, it gives you the choice to edit, delete, move, rotate, scale, whether it's your object or something else in the scene, or invert it or mirror it, whatever you need to. It's the same as also the two other tools are mirror, line. They are pretty self-explanatory. If you need to group something, in other words, make multiple objects into one object, you will group it next to it. Views are how you view the things in your viewport, not the actual physical views, not like your front, left, and side. It's, do you want to see ghosting? Do you want to see key times? Do you want to see shade selected? In other words, how you view things in your viewport. Okay. Create is you create everything in Max is under your create tab, whether it's your standard primitives, which we're going to run through today, and your extended primitives. Then you've got your AEC objects all the way down to your systems of your bones, your particle systems, your cameras, lights, everything you need to ever create are under here. You can go and drop and you'll see a list, another list, and the list can go on. You can just go through all of them until you can create something. There you go. Particles, you can create blizzards, snow, whatever. You can go through all of them. So if you say, I don't know how to create a sphere, just go down standard primitives and there's a sphere. Okay. Modifiers are how you affect those objects. So if you created the sphere and you need it to be more of a little squashed ball, You can add a modifier to squash it, or stretch it, or warp it. You can add as much as you want. There's animation ones, there's cloth ones, there's hair and fur, there's cache tools to help you cache animation. There's all of it. We will run through all of it this year. This term will just be mainly about your modeling. So next term, because module 2 you'll be modeling a character and texturing it. Module 3 you'll be doing texturing and lighting, and module 4 you'll be doing animation. So by module 2 I'll expect you to understand how to move verts around, so when you do your character it doesn't look funny. Okay, graph editors is how you control your animation, because you've got your animation, which is you can build your bones, your skeletons, your muscles, all of that can happen in there. To control the actual speed of your animation, whether it goes slowly in the beginning, fast then, are done through your graphs. The graphs are identical in every single package, from After Effects to Softimage to Houdini to Nuke. All of them have the identical graph system. Rendering is how you finally get everybody to see your pretty stuff. It's the computer painting the picture for you. It takes a long time, but it's definitely worth it in the end if you look at the final product. Customize is how you customize your interface. Whether you want, instead of a gray, you can have a blue, black, pink, green, whatever you want. You can adjust it there. You can adjust your shortcuts, your unit scale, your grid size. You can do whatever you need in the customizing. Max Script are for people that can script. I respect you. Keep it up, because we need more programmers that can actually work in Max. Keep it up, because you can actually do a lot of scripts that can come in handy. And help is easy. Instead of going down here, just go F1. It'll bring it up. Unfortunately, the help is not localized. It's online. They've moved to online about 3 years ago, and it's only online. Now you've got your viewports. On the right is the same stuff. We'll run through that now again. You've got your top viewport. To select a viewport, your middle mouse button down, because your middle mouse button is actually a button, not only a scroll wheel. You click down on it. You'll notice that your viewport gets outlined in yellow. You can do the same on the front one, the left one, and the perspective. Anyone who's ever done any architectural stuff or anything, this is nothing new. Or played with any 3D package, none of it's new. Most of the 3D packages start with one viewport straight off the bat. Max, because it was heavily involved in the architectural, start off like this. Max is still 80% coverage in the world, because it's used for anything to do with CAD drawings, anything to do with gaming, and now it's moving quite heavily into the feature folds. So now we're going to select any viewport. Let's go to the top. If you need to bring a viewport up, just one viewport so you can have the full screen covered, you go Alt and W, and it'll bring it up. To minimize it, the same keys, Alt and W, back down again. You can do the same with the front, so you middle mouse and you go Alt W and Alt W. I'm going to go to the perspective viewport and go Alt W, and there we go. Now I'm going to teach you navigation in the viewport, so I'm just going to quickly create a box so you can actually see what's rotating and what's not. Okay, so to actually pan around is middle mouse button down. Hold it down, you'll see a little hand pop up, which means you're ready to pan. If you don't know what it's doing, just look at the icon that pops up. Normally it's just a cross or an arrow, which depending what mode you're in, but if you middle mouse button down, it's ready to pan. If you by mistake lose it, which happens very often, don't panic, just press Z. In most packages means zoom extent all. So it'll bring it back into view. Even if the object is not selected and it's off somewhere else, just press Z. It'll bring it back into view. Okay. So middle mouse button down is your panning. If you need to rotate, just hold down Alt and middle mouse button again, and it will rotate. Now you'll find something weird. When rotating, it rotates around the middle of the way the camera is looking at. Okay. If you want it to rotate around the object, just select the object. It'll rotate around the object. Do you see the difference? Now the object is rotating around. Woo! The moment you select it, it'll rotate around that object. That's how you know it's rotating. So before you get confused and wondering why you can't rotate around, if you want to rotate around a specific object, just select it. It'll rotate around it perfectly. If you want to rotate in the viewport, you'll notice everything rotates. Okay, so hold down Alt and middle mouse button will rotate. Middle mouse button on its own, pan. The easiest is zoom. Just scroll in and out. Okay, If you've once again lost and you don't know where everything is, press Z. It'll bring whatever you've modeled into view. Okay, let's delete the object and let's start creating objects. I'm going to leave the grid on. If you don't like the grid on, just press G, it'll disappear. I'm leaving it on so then for navigational purposes you can actually see what it's doing. I'm going to create a box. Understand primitives. You've got your create panel, which we're going to tackle with today. Under it we have create geometry, shapes, lights, cameras, helpers, space warps, and system settings. If you go next to the create tab, which looks like a little gradient ramp sun with lines going into it, that is your create. Next to it is the modify tab. It's a little bent object that will give you the anything that can modify your object. There's nothing right now because I have no object select. Next to it is hierarchy. That will be used a lot if you start rigging your character. Characters only move because it's got a skeletal structure underneath, and in turn the skin, what you see on the outside, the prettiness, is actually linked to that skeleton to move. And what drives that is all hierarchy, parent, child, and you will use this until you get so sick and tired of it. Next to it is the animation tab for people that animate. You can be able to animate cameras to your legs, arms moving. It's all under your animation tab. Display tab are for people that do the final assembly of it. They want to be able to control if they only see geometry, shapes, lights, cameras, helpers. You can hide everything. If it's ticked on, you won't see it. And at the end are utilities for programmers and people that need to set up sliders and everything in your scene to be able to help on final product delivery will be found under here. Now we go back to the create tab. As you can see, all of it's the same here. On the top and on the side are identical. I prefer to use the side. I never go to the top. Or I use a shortcut. I will try to, if I do something and you don't know how I did it, please ask me and I'll tell you the shortcut. You need to learn shortcuts as much as possible. Okay. Now, in your viewport, there's also three little icons on the top. Well, one's a plus, and if you right click on it, it will go yellow. It'll give you options for that viewport, whether it is a active viewport, a disabled viewport, a view cube. You know, like from that right now, I'm going to put the view cube on so you can see what I'm talking about because I don't like it. So now you got the view cube, which is that little ugly cube in the top right hand corner. Can everyone see it? You can't miss it. It takes up so much space and it's a waste. That's a view cube. How it works is if you're too lazy to actually hold down Alt and Pan, and I recommend you learn to use it, you can hold the little circle on the outside and it'll rotate. And if you're really lazy, you click on front and it takes you to the front. Then you click and it goes to the right. And you click to go to the top. There, and then you click again, it'll go to perspective. Please don't do that. I get rid of this cube instantly. Configure, bye-bye. I don't need to show it. It's a Maya thing. They use it because just in case you have to switch between programs, most people don't know how to use the navigate in other programs. But luckily enough, I switched from Lightwave, now went to Maya, Max, and Softimage. Now I'm back to Max, so I don't have an issue with navigating in software. Okay. Next to it, it says perspective. That's the viewport you are currently in. If I by mistake pressed, let's say I like to use shortcuts. Most people work like this and then they go to the new viewport and maximize it. I do everything in one viewport. It aggravates a lot of people, but this is how I work. T is for top. So now I'm in the top viewport. You can see because it says top. F is for front. Now I'm in front. L is for left. B is for bottom. And if you really want to get anal, U is for orthographic. These are for the architectural people. So you'll notice it the most when I press U. That's orthographic. You'll notice it more if I put in an actual cube in it. Now I'm going to go back to the perspective viewport. Realistic is how you see it in the viewport. It tries to mimic, let's say you got nice lighting in it and textures. It tries to mimic it as close to final product as it can. It won't get it 100% accurate, but at least it will give you an idea so you don't have to click rendering just to see what the final product will look like. Okay, you can also switch it to, let's say, something simple. Let's create a box and I'll show you what the settings are. To create a box, understand the parameters, click box. The first click, hold left mouse button down, you're creating the base. Don't let go of left mouse button, not until you've created the base. You can create any shape you want. I'm going to try and make it as cube-like as possible. Let go of it. Now the base is done. Now you're holding no buttons. You can either go down or up. I'm going to go up and left click again. And now you've created a cube. Well, in this case, a very weird box. Under your modifier table, tab, there is settings, properties for every single shape you make. This one's just a straight box, so I'm going to call it box. And at the moment, the length is 59.502. I'm just going to make it all 60, 60. And tab will jump between each one. So I'm going to go to the first one and say, okay, I want 65. Press tab, it'll go to the next one, 65. Tab, 65. What length segments is, if you're going to add more detail to this object, right now I wouldn't add more detail to it because it's deadly straight. So if you go to the top view, there's no wonkiness or funny shape in it, so you don't need the extra detail to deform it. So I don't need to go and say, for example, as you can see, I've already added more detail. So if you wanted to shape this a little bit more, now you've got the detail to work with. And you can add it into the other side. And now you can also add it in horizontally. But because mine's a perfect cube, I don't need any of that detail. So I'm going to just right click. If you want to zero anything out, you just right click on, there's a little up and down arrow. Just right click on it. It'll go away. Okay. Now, if you need to move the object, there are 3 keys you need to know, or you can go on the top here. There's a little move icon. It's 4 arrows. Next to it is a rotating arrow. And next to that is a scale arrow. If you want to, it's W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. You can tell which one you're on. If you select the object, this has got 3 arrows. That means each axis you can move it. So if you needed to move it, for example, you select, don't grab in the middle because then you can just go crazy and by mistake place it God knows where. Who knows where it goes. Rather have full control. If you need to go in the Y, just go over the Y and move it. Because I'm moving up now, it'll still move left and right only. It won't let me go up. So I can move it over. If you need to rotate, press E. Or click on the rotating icon up here. Once again, don't just rotate in the middle, because if you really want to rotate, that's not very accurate. It's cool though, but it's not accurate. Just pick an axis you want to go on. Let's say that one, rotate that way, and then that way. Okay. If you need to scale, that's the only time, unless you're trying to squash or stretch something, you click directly in the middle of the triangle and you'll scale it up and down. If you need to squash it, just pick an axis. Once again, grab one of the handles and squash. Squash and stretch. There we go. Okay. And once again, W for move, E for rotate, R for scale. This only works to the object, not to move or rotate in your screen. That's where Alt and middle mouse button and the O does this stuff. Okay. Let's move it over. So now I'm just going to make sure it's on W, which is the translate. Just to make sure it's highlighted in blue on the top here. I'm going to select the Y axis and move it over. There we go. Done. Let's go and create the other beautiful stuff. Go back to the Create tab. I'm going to create a cone. Once again, hold the middle mouse button down until you've got the size of the base down. Everything starts at the base and then moves outwards. Let go of it. You can either go up or down again. This one you've got 3 clicks because you're making it a cone. Left click, don't hold it, just left click, and now you can go into any direction to make it either bigger, smaller, whatever you want to make it. I'm going to make it a nice point. Left click to finish it. And there you go. And once again, I don't like too much detail going horizontally because from the bottom corner straight to the top is dead straight. It's not bumpy or anything weird. So I'm going to get rid of all that detail because unfortunately too much detail means longer render times. I'm trying to help by reducing and minimizing the amount of effort required by the machine. And as you can see from the top, a little bit bumpy all the way around. So we're going to fix 2 problems. So we're going to go under the Modify tab where it's got the attributes of the object. Click on it. Now, we don't need any height segments. That's the problem we have. First of all, there's too many lines running horizontally. At the moment, it says 5. I'm going to right click and keep it to 1. As you can see, it cleaned it up. I'll show you by adding more. That's too much. And that's better. If you need to be able to see a wireframe shaded or not shaded in the viewport, it's the F3 and F4 button. F3 will make it solid. If you press F3 again, it'll give it a wireframe. So you can actually just see what makes up the object, the lines. So F3 solid, F3, it's just one key, F3. F4 just shows the lines. You can see little subtle pink lines in it, darker ones. If you turn it off, it turns them on and off. Okay. We've just created a cone. Let's rename it. Try to keep the naming simple, so if somebody has to look at your file, they know what you're doing. Let's add more detail to the circumference. So that's sides. At the moment it's 24. Let's try 36. It's not smooth enough. Try 48. Okay, there we go. Now we've got a decent amount of sides. We don't have unnecessary detail going upwards. And let's move it out of the way. Once again, I'm going to grab the yellow and move it over. The sphere is the easiest. It's one click and drag and let go and it's done. So left click, hold it, done. I think it's a little bit too low poly. You can see the edges are, when I mean low poly is you can see that it's made up of faceted edges. You want to be a little bit smoother so it looks nice. So under modifier, instead of 32 segments, make it 48. There we go, a little bit smoother. Okay. If you go to the left view by pressing L, you'll see this dark solid line compared to the rest of the grid, and there's a horizontal and a vertical one. The horizontal one is the floor. Try to keep everything above it. So just move your object up and it'll be above the ground. Okay, let's rename it. I'm just going to call it sphere so I don't have 001. If you need to change the color of this object, it's not actual true color change. It's not a texture change like if the people that face the brick wall, that's a texture. You can see the bricks. The people that face the white wall, that's also texture because it's got a grain to it. What we're changing is just basic, simple color. You'll notice that next to the word sphere up here, it's got a little color swatch. Click on it and you can switch it to any color you want. I'm going to make it a yellow. And it changed it to yellow. Go back to the Create tab. And now a geosphere is the same as a normal sphere except for it's got no polars. What that means is all the points go to the top and the north and the south pole. Best, for lack of a better explanation, everything goes to a polar point. Geosphere doesn't for gaming reasons. It needs to be perfectly equal all the way around. So I'm going to create the geosphere and you'll notice it's also triangles only. There we go. You click on it. I'm going to rename it. Maybe switch color. What color? Let's go to green. And then I'm going to add more detail to it because it's relatively low polish. So I'm going to set it to about 8. This doesn't have sides now. This has got segments. All of them have something, whether it's segments, sides, or no, whichever it works. Detail, iterations. There's always some sort of way of upraising each model. I'm going to move it out of the way, and now we've got a little geosphere. You can distinctly see the wireframe difference from a normal sphere on the left to a geosphere on the right. Okay. Click on Create. We're going to create a cylinder. Left drag and hold the base. Let go and go up. And you're done. Once again, I don't like the extra horizontal detail. I don't ever like any unnecessary detail because it's too taxing on the machine. So we on use the height segments, I kill 0. Sides make it 36 so it's nice and round. There we go. And I'm going to move it out of the way and make sure the name is done correct. You'll notice in the viewport there's a shadow. If you're wondering where it's coming from, there's a light that follows your viewport that's literally behind your camera, your perspective view. Okay, that's about it. Okay, you'll notice, especially if I rotate lower, you'll notice that the shadow casts on another object in the corner. Now we're going to create a tube. It's basically a cylinder with a hole cut out of it. So I'm going to grab it, create the base. The first click is the diameter. The second one is the inner radius of the actual thickness of the wall. Click and then go back up and left click. And once again, I'm going to get rid of the horizontal detail, add more sides to it so it's nice and smooth. So get rid of the 5 to 1 and make the sides 36. And change the name. And there we go. Now we've got a torus, which is basically a donut. So once again, the outside creates the size of it. The next click will be your actual thickness of the torus. And then you click and it's done. Make sure it's above the ground again, like everything else. And then press P to go back to perspective. Z will zoom back into the torus. We just need to make it nice and smooth. So first thing we need to do is add more sides because it's too blocky. So we'll set it to about 36. There we go. Now it's nice and round. And this is where you can play around with it. If you want 12 sides, you can, or you can have 4 sides. And you can see it adds more detail to it, or you can make it lot rounder. So let's set it to 24 sides. So it's nice and round. Okay. Let's make sure the name's correct. And move it out of the way. Once again, go to the Create tab and create a pyramid. The first one is, it's like creating the cone, except for it's just a pyramid. The first one will create the base, next one will create the point, and you're done. And each one of them have attributes, so play around and see what the attributes do. And there we go. It's more of the extended primitives that actually have more weird things that go on with it, so it'll be interesting to play around with. And then Max is famous. If you speak to anyone, there's Max has a teapot. There we go. It makes a teapot. I don't know why, but it does for some reason. It thinks it's important to make a teapot. And most of your tutorials will be done around the teapot, weirdly enough. Let's add more detail to it. So instead of 4 segments, let's make it 8. You can see it's got detail already. You can control it by saying it's got no body, no handle, no spout, no lid. Okay. And there's your teapot. Last one is the plane. Most things are modeled that are not conformed to man-made, and even something man-made things are started with a plane. A plane is just one face. So if I create this, and let's make it 90 by 90, 101, you will notice it's just basically what we like to call a poly. It's a 4-sided face. And you can create a lot with just one face and move it outwards. And shape it to be a whole head, a whole body, whatever you might need it to do. If I'm ever modeling a head, I start with one face and work my way outwards. And that is your planes. Those are your standard primitives. Everything in here, minus the teapot, is standard. The teapot is just there for because, well, it's Max. Everything else is standard. The donut, the plane, the spheres, the cylinders, the tubes, the box, the all of it you can make things with. You'll notice that your hard surface model, the closer you look at it, everything is almost repeated because we human beings, we're lazy, manufactured by machine. So anything that they can rotate, repeat, and copy and paste, they will do it. So most of the things are made up with primitives. And this is what a standard primitive is. We're going to run 2 extended primitives. So I'm going to just reset my file. So I'm going to go to the top left Max icon, click on it and say reset file. And you say, do you really want to reset? You say, yep. I'm going to quickly go and clean up my folder structure because I'm sure by now I've got so many increments saved that it will be too many. I'm going to go to my scene file and start cleaning it up. Before I start deleting, I'll make sure that the copies that I have work. Because if by mistake if your Max crashes, it can take a couple of versions back with it. It sucks, but it is true. Now I'm going to save it, and I'm going to say extended parameters. There we go. And save. Don't put that. Okay, once again, Alt-W on the viewport that I want, which is the perspective. If you have 2 screens at home, do yourself a favor. This can detach on the side. You'll notice I'm dragging it and making it bigger. You can actually detach that, put it on a separate screen, because this starts getting your space starts getting very limiting, because I generally work with it like this, so I don't have to scroll down forever. So what it'll do is it'll carry on and carry on over. Because I don't want to scroll forever and scroll, oh, where are the attributes? Scroll, 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 and it'll be there forever. So if you can detach this, you literally grab the top where it says main toolbar and drag it over. You can detach anything and make anything customizable. You'll notice the moment I go over an edge, it will say main toolbar. Well, it's finicky there. Main toolbar. You can drag and detach that. Okay. But for now, we'll keep it as 1. I also like to work with, if you by mistake press Control X, everything disappears. Don't panic. It's just expert mode. It's just hiding things you don't need. And if you by mistake save and you didn't press Control and you press S, what will happen is you got snap tools. So if you had an object in here, you'll notice that it's got a little funny yellow X. It's trying to snap your object to the grid. It's awesome if you're doing the architectural stuff and also doing gaming stuff, because all your levels need to easily be able to snap to each other. Now under your standard primitives, click on the yellow tab and go down to extended primitives. Here comes some, I like to call some of the useless ones and some of the very extravagant weird shapes you get. we start with a hedra. Hedra is generally, if you're going to start a soccer ball and you don't want to do patch by patch like you should, the easiest way is to just create a hedra, and you'll notice it's just a simple shape, nothing special about it. Let's change the name to hedra 01. This is where the power of the hedra comes in. You can click on, by standard it is tetra, means 3 sides, cube. There's your new shape. This is where you start creating your soccer ball. You can control the parameters. Unfortunately, some soccer balls are very unique in its design. Like I had to do the World Cup soccer ball. You couldn't do this. You had to actually model patch by patch. Yeah, and you can create your little soccer ball. Now with the star one, you can see why it's called star. There's a star in there. And then there's star 2. This one's a little trickier. You have to actually look. There's the other star. If you play around with parameters, you can get some interesting shapes. Whether it's that one, whichever you decide to pick. There we go. You can play around with it. I'm going to go to the front view by pressing F and just shift it above the ground. Press P to go to perspective. Z will zoom extent. And let's just move it over. By pressing W, I've selected the move tool. If you by mistake and it's gone, just click off and click back on and it'll come back. Let's drag it over. There we go. Now you've created a hedra. It's more of a, all these shapes now, I like to call it, is more for the motion graphics. You can get a lot of interesting stuff if you animate this. Because every slider you can animate. So you could actually picture all these shapes moving into cool patterns. You know, it's just it's a lot easier than you trying to create it from scratch. Okay. Let's go back to the create tab. You got a torus knot. It makes a knot. There we go. There's your knot. Let's control the thickness. The cool thing about this knot is if you do want to put knots into things and everything, you can adjust this knot quite nicely, and you can a lot easier than you trying to manually do it. There's lots of options. My favorite is you can twist it. You can see what it's doing to the wireframe. You can also do that and flatten it a bit. So it creates a little flattened twirl. My favorite is lumps because it literally gives it lumps. So I'm going to up the lump, play around with the height, play around with the offset, and you can, if you animate that, it can make some cool patterns. It can be somebody going through a pipe, whatever you might want it to be. Okay. You can also control the sides, the offset, the lumps, the twist. Go crazy. You can do a lot with it. And now I'm going to move it over. Now we're going to create a chamfer box. A chamfer box is basically a box. But what it does is, if you feel your table, even the most square of corners, it's round. It's never perfectly dead corner. And in 3D, you need that little bit of a bevel, or in this case, a chamfer or a fillet, just so the light can hit it a little bit better. So what it does is, same as creating a box. Create the base, let go. Create the height, left click. But now it's not completed. Now you're chamfering the edge. So you'll notice you can chamfer the edge a little bit, so you can go as crazy as you want. But let's go and not too crazy. And now what it's done is it's cut that solid line into a 45. If you go under your modifier stack, which is next to your create tab, you can go to the fillet segment and make it round. I use this a lot because I like nice round corners, or at least not a flat corner. Once again, the next one will be a chamfer cylinder. It's exactly the same as the box, except for it's just the corners are chamfered on the cylinder. Once again, create the base, let go of it, up, and the next one will be creating the chamfer edge. There we go. Let's make this one quite a nice big chamfer. I don't want it too straight, let's make it a nice round edge. So I'm going to go to my modifier, change my name to chamfer cylinder. Under your fillet segments. Fillet segments is your detail. You can add it until you're happy with how round it goes. And seeing that it's round, I'd like it to be at least relatively decently round and not so blocky. Let's make it about 24 sides. There we go. And move it over. And now we're going to create an oil tank. Literally create an oil tank shape. Minus the ladders and everything else attached to it, obviously. So let's create the oil tank. It will look like a squashed sphere until you extend it out. There we go. Trust me, a lot of these will save you time in making that shape. If you have to make that shape from a cylinder and then try to stretch it, why not just use this shape off the bat? Okay, and I'm going to just give it more detail around the sides. Or this time, let's actually make it just 8-sided. There we go. Okay. And we go. Let's change the name to oil tank, not 001. Okay. Now we're going to create a capsule, which is similar to an oil tank, except for it's more of the you'll see capsule like a capsule. There we go. Starts off as a sphere, then you can extend it, and there's your capsule. Anything that can save you time will save you time. And trust me, it'll come in handy if you're making 40 million of these things a day. You need time to help you. I mean, why model a capsule if there's one? And it comes with UV coordinates, which you will learn is if you need to place a texture on something, it needs to be relatively unwrapped and flattened so you can place a texture on it. Now we're going to go and create a spindle. It's relatively simple. It looks like a spindle. There's nothing fancy about it. These are more of the weird shapes, like you'll create a diamond from some of these. And let's go create the spindle. There we go. Let's just leave that little bit of an edge. There we go. Let's make it a little bit more round and kill some of the height segments because there's too much detail for something dead straight. Once again, let's go kill let's make it 24 sides. Let's see if that's enough. Make it 36 sides so it's nice and round. There we go. And let's go and add more height segments. And there we go. It's clean and neat. Let's change the name to just spindle. If you need to see what your naming convention is doing, just press H and you'll see everything in your scene, and if you've named it wrong. Like, I didn't change capsule, you see it's capsule 0001. Let's grab that and fix it. Okay. And if you start combining these, you can get a lot of cool shapes. I'm going to go one step further. It will not be acceptable enough just to put your like a box on top of a box. You will be able to edit that mesh and make it into one object. Next will be your L extension. Literally makes an L-shaped wall. So if you notice it, I'm creating an L, depending which way I start and finish it. So I'm going to create my L height. Now I'm going to just create my thickness. That's fine. And there we go. We've just created an L-shaped wall. You'll notice there's a lot of things in here like windows, doors, window frames, trees that are made a lot for the architectural. And they will definitely make your life easier if you're doing anything that's architectural related. There's your L-shaped wall. Now you've got ring wave. Literally, it's a pattern inside of a cylinder. You'll see what I mean. There I created. It creates a funky little pattern. And that is it. A lot of these, and once again, I'd use this for more of the motion graphics because you can get some cool patterns and shapes out of it. There we go. You can adjust the segments, the width. You can animate that. If you click on it where it says grow and stay, it'll grow from nothing and then stay. Okay, and if it says no growth, then it's just no growth. Don't worry, all of this will become, you'll get the hang of it pretty soon. Okay, and there's ring wave. Let's adjust the name. Okay. The next one will be a C extension, which is the same as the L, but closed off to be a C. So you'll see, there we go. There we go. And let's just adjust the thickness of the wall. And we're done. Okay. Let's just change the name again. Now we're down to hose. Ring wave, hose. Hose literally makes a pipe with a ribbed effect to it. You'll see what I mean. So if this is a pipe that I'm doing on let's say a shock, you can control the detail around, how many bumps in it. What makes this powerful is that if you see where it says bounding to object pivots, what that means is if you've got a shock in this and the shock is going up and down, you can select the top of it, which will say over here top. You can select that to the top part of the shock and attach the bottom one to the bottom, so when the shock compresses, it'll compress with it. So it'll save you so much time in skinning and rigging, and it's already there for you, so why not do it? Okay, and that's it. That's hose. Let's adjust the maybe diameter a little bit, 70. Make it more segments. There we go. And cycles is how many times it's ribbed inside of the actual two shapes. You can also have where it starts and where it ends. In this case, let's just have it start and end. Not too far off the end. There we go. And you can also have diameter and detail. Let's add about 24 sides so it's nice and round. You'll notice that it goes from the 24 sides instead of the normal 8. It's pretty low poly. But 24 is nice. And you can also have the pipe be a different shape. At the moment it's a round hose. It can also be a rectangular hose. It can also be a D section hose. Literally it would look like a D hose. The letter D, but in the length of a hose with the ribs on it. Okay. Let's change the name. There we go. And that is your, well, no, we've got prism. Prism is, well, you'll see. It's simple. It's actually a prism. It's not as confusing as the Hedra or the torus knot. It's actually just a prism. There we go. What the cool thing about this one is you can control each point individually. So at the moment I'm saying let me put it there and up. So you can actually go and control where each point sits. And then add some height. I usually use that for when I'm making a rig, which is the skeleton for a character. If I need some distinct different shapes or anything, I use that to have as a little controlling point. And that is your extended parameters. Next week we'll be running through some splines, which I will show you now, so you get the idea. And I will be starting to model the watch, so you can get the idea of how I move from a standard primitive into actually making the shape and then shaping the shape to be the final object. Okay, so if you're going to use a spline, the best way to do it is, a spline is just a line that you can eventually use to create an object. Next to the create objects geometry, there's a called shapes. So let's say I'm going to use my line. Click on it. I'm just going to create a shape. Makes no difference what the shape actually is. I'm in the top view, doing it down. There we go. And then I'm going to use a circle. So now I've got two little shapes, and I just want to be able to extrude this outwards, so at least it's got a whatever that's supposed to be. Who knows? A spline is a line. That's all it really is. There's nothing else to it. It's a line because if you go into wireframe mode, shaded mode, it's nothing but a line. If you need it to be something other than a line, you need to make sure you put an extrude on it. So on the drop down, now you're going to see the power of the modify stack. There is hair in there, there's patch deforms, there is p-follow, the list can go on, and bends and bevels, on and on and on. All I'm looking for is an extrude. And then I move it up. And it's already got some depth to it. This is the quickest way to do logos, funny enough. The client will give you the font, you type it in, you extrude it, you bevel the edges, and you're done. So you start with a shape, and you end up with nothing. What it most commonly used for is, if you've ever done any metalwork or woodwork, it's called beveling. So let's say you want to make a vase, or any bottle, actually, beer bottle, Coke bottle, whatever you might want to do. That is the side profile of my vase. If I want to lathe it, that's the tool that you're looking for. In Maya, it is revolve. I don't know what it is in soft because I haven't actually revolved or lathed it. You're looking for lathe. Go to maximum. And from your vase was a line, and you created your vase. That's the quickest way to make a vase. And that's the power of lines and splines, and the list can go on, but I'll run through this next week. Just please, no matter what you decide to work with, or get, or whatever you model, get as much reference material as you possibly